This is Governor Bobber. I like good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Go! You're watching Dr. Politics.
Good Friday, everyone. Last Friday, the doctors were actually hanging out with Congressman Alex Mooney. That's why we were not on last night. Dave had a great idea. We should have brought the camera stuff. We could have done the show live there. Lively debates there, and it was a lot of fun. Good turnout. So it was always good to see our old friend Alex Mooney, former state senator, state party chair, soon to be senator from the state of West Bygone, Virginia. But so it was good. Now that we got pictures of Dr. Dave, we need to add those into the promo.
Oh, thank you.
In the morning, the openings, I should say.
Oh.
So we've got busy week.
I feel welcomed. This is very nice. I feel welcomed. And
hey, John, I got a question for you. Is Joe Biden now a native racist? Is he a nativist and a racist?
Well, that's right, because now he's
build
building
a wall.
Yeah.
Let's build a wall. Yeah.
I love the cynical way, though, he described it. He said, well, it won't work, and I don't want to have to do it, but I got to do it. So
did they say something like they kept getting funding for the Congress never switched out the funding for the wall or whatever?
Yeah, there's some technicality, but in order to do it, I guess they waived a bunch of other environmental and rules and laws. And I guess you're right. Congress had still appropriated it. He had asked Congress, I guess, not to, and they wouldn't go along. But remember, for 2 years, Democrats controlled the House. So if he wanted to make sure to strip out all future wall funding, he probably could have gotten it done then.
Yeah. But the good news is they are building the wall, but because this one schmo from Florida, Matt Gaetz, he's taking the whole Biden stuff off the front page, and everything everyone's talking about is Republicans in disarray.
Yep. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. And like you said, you're just taking the focus away from Biden, inflation, the border. That's what we should be talking about. Having a squabble over the Speaker of the House, the American people don't care about. And anyway, what's the difference? It's still going to be, even if you got someone marginally better than McCarthy, you still got a Democrat Senate and a Democrat president.
And here's the Mark Levin was adamant about passing that budget. He supported that. And Mark Levin, what is somebody going to say? Mark's a rhino? Mark's not a rhino. He supported that budget.
I agree.
Yeah. And by the way, Jeff, you were there. Did you find it a little disturbing, all the loud applause when they said Steve Scalise was not going to be the speaker?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what that was all about, but yeah, I did. I did notice that.
A lot of people did not, and they were all cheering when he said Kevin McCarthy is no longer speaker. Everyone's like cheering, and
I didn't think McCarthy was that bad of a guy. I don't really.
I mean, he was a good guy. And here's the one thing: Jim Jordan should think twice before he wants to be speaker. Because if you remember our friend Paul Ryan, fellow internet at Power America,
yeah, that's right.
Paul Ryan did not want to be speaker, but they begged him to be speaker. He became speaker, and then what did they do? They demonized, Paul Ryan for being this establishment swamp creature and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's
a thankless job. It
is.
It's a tough
Remember
job.
Newt, our old boss Paul, used to rail against Newt all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There was a picture at NAT with him and Newt yelling at each other. It was a black and white picture. Yeah.
Wow. Huh.
I mean, not everybody
Yeah.
can be a speaker. I mean, it's a special skill set.
Yep.
I mean, Republicans may not like Nancy Pelosi, but she was a skilled speaker.
Yeah.
Kevin McCarthy, I think he had a chance to become a pretty decent speaker overall. Look at the Republican Party. I mean, we have so many factions. We've got Matt Gaetz and all these other people there railing against, all these things. Look, I have no problem with Republicans wanting to stand up to some principle, at least make some similar stand possible out there. But until you get thrust into that position of speaker, you have got to do so much politicking to try to navigate all of those things. And the Republican Party, with all those factions, it's a very hard group to keep happy and to keep together. McCarthy probably sowed the seeds of his own doom by agreeing to just the whole one vote vacate, issue anyway.
Yeah.
That put him right on the edge. And, it was only going to be a matter of time, I think, before someone like Matt Gaetz or whatever would just use any excuse to bounce him. But, what are these guys thinking? I mean, Dave, you referred to it earlier. We've got Biden and all these other issues to talk about. Here we are just a little more than a year away from another crucial election. And the Republicans go out and they do this. They oust their own speaker and throw the House into disarray. And, we don't know what's really going to happen. Jim Jordan's got Trump endorsement. That's great. That's fine. But, does Jim Jordan really want to be the speaker? You said thankless job. Yes, you're going to find, Jim Jordan he's done very well in his position. And that's where he does a good job there. Once he becomes speaker, if that is the case,
he doesn't get that committee anymore. He doesn't get to.
No, I mean, there's a whole nother thing. Now he's got to deal with all these other issues. He's got to deal with his fellow conservative Republicans that he's been this part of, and he's going to find out it won't take very long for him to become very unpopular with some of them because he won't do everything they want. Just like you were saying, Dwight. I mean, look, Paul Ryan, I think he was a good guy, and he gave, when he agreed to become, Romney's running mate, he gave conservatives some hope that, okay, we've got, we're not sure about Romney's credentials as a conservative, but we're pretty sure about Paul Ryan. But Paul Ryan Paul Ryan is the Speaker of the House, completely different animal. He had to do other things that were really probably not something he would have preferred to do, but in that position he had to do. And then he leaves as being very vilified by a lot of people.
Even to this day they vilify him, and I think he gets a raw deal, frankly. I think Speaker Ryan was probably one of our best speakers we've had.
Yeah.
And I really think we need a Tom DeLay type in the Republican caucus and keep all these people. Tom DeLay never would have let this happen. Matt Gaetz would have been like on a slow train back to Florida.
But there's nobody really controlling these people, whether or not it's Nancy Mace, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert. We've got all these people out there doing kind of funny, funky things out there, and that's supposed to be the face of the Republican Party. That's the image that we're trying to get through. Is these people? Look, they get duly elected. That's fine. But I'm telling you, I hope somebody primaries Lauren Boebert because she doesn't deserve to be in Congress. We've got people that we have got to get out of there and get back to business. I want a conservative Congress, but you can't have 100% conservative Congress based on the makeup of the United States. You're going to have some middle of the roaders and some other things, and this is a party that's going to have to deal with that. And we've got some people out there that don't understand this principle. This is a big party that you've got to work together on. You will get more legislation passed if you work together than if you fight against each other. I mean, look, to me, I tweeted or X'd it out or whatever you want to call it. I said as soon as that happened, I'm basically saying, the Republicans just did the Democrats a big favor. They in essence handed them the 2024 election, at least on the House level potentially, because they're just showing they can't govern.
Yeah,
I mean, you have got to show. I mean, American people, do they by and large do they care who the Speaker of the House is? Not really. That's there's a lot of inside politics goes on there. They don't understand all that stuff. Yeah. But from an optics standpoint, you look at the Republican Party and you're like, why would I vote any of those guys in 2024?
Yeah, I agree. Focus on what we need, what things that help us, and focus on next election. And you got to get rid of Biden. You need to keep the House and the Senate. And engaging in this circular firing squad, distracting the attention, giving the media and Democrats something else to talk about doesn't help us.
Yeah, I mean, and we've got so many people, we've got so many, conservatives out there. You look on social media, they're like, "Oh, good, they got rid of McCarthy," and it's like, yeah, but what was the backup plan? They don't. I mean, it's one thing if you're going to get rid of the Speaker of the House. You've got someone ready to take over, and they have the backing of the party. But that really wasn't the case. I mean, they did this.
I mean, we saw this movie before in January. How many? Was 15 rounds for him to get elected to Speaker?
Yeah.
And every round they did not have anybody viable to take on Kevin McCarthy. It's like Matt Gaetz. He didn't want to be Speaker. Byron Donalds didn't want to be Speaker. All these people, the Freedom Caucus 20 or the Patriot 20, whatever you want to call them, they did not, they basically did themselves did a disservice, frankly, because it's, I think what they should have done is gone along with Kevin McCarthy, because, with this, this was almost like, after the 96 elections, remember, Republicans had almost like I think it was a 12-seat majority or an 18-seat majority. It was a very slim majority.
Yeah.
Granted, 2 years later, we came back, we got like a 20-some seat majority.
Yeah.
But I think it's really tough to. And here's the thing: one thing they don't understand is we've got a Democrat president. We've got a Democrat Senate. Maryland now has 3 United States senators.
That's right.
But, we have. But here's
another
it's
topic.
I got a funny story about that topic. There was a time when Maryland kind of had 3 senators, but as I was saying, you need to make deals. When you're in leadership, you're there to make deals. Mitch McConnell. I am not a fan of Mitch McConnell. He forced my man Jim Bunning out of a job, but Mitch McConnell got the justices to the Supreme Court. He got the judges in. That takes a skilled negotiator. Sure, does he give away too much? But look at the stuff he gives us. I mean, I think concerns should be happy that we have an Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. That we had a senator that pushed through the nomination after President Trump lost in 2020. Another basically the president's nominee. And I know Chucky Schumer's like, well, you said you couldn't. Barack Obama couldn't do it. Yeah, he couldn't because we were in charge. That's why we make the rules as we go along, and that is so great that we did that. Frankly.
The other thing is, I've always thought of that people don't. I think people realize this, but you got to understand, America, our system of government is based on shared power. We don't have a parliamentary system, so yeah, you may take the House of Representatives, but the Speaker of the House is not like a prime minister. You don't have the power to get yours through. You'd still have to consider the Senate and the presidency. And I know it seems to be distasteful sometimes to accept, well, we're going to have to compromise at times, but that's just the reality. And I don't think Democrats and Republicans want to believe that. They just want, hey, we're going to get what will please the base. We don't want to disappoint the base. But the reality is, if you want to get anything done, there's going to have to be some distaste.
You know how happy Paul would have been if the class of 94 did everything to please the Republican base?
Yeah.
I don't think he would have nearly as many fights with Newt Gingrich if they did placate to the base.
Yeah.
I think your point about optics is a good point, because while the speaker doesn't have unlimited power, they do get to choose what to speak about in the House. You get to the bills presented. So there is things that are of interest to various organizations or the party. They get to choose what to speak on, what to vote on. Plus, like you say, it's about having someone who represents the party, and the party is not a unified party at this point. I mean, we're going to have and we'll continue to have divisions about who should be the presidential nominee. You know, and you have people that feel strongly about, you know, like whether Trump should be considered or not. So, you know, if you see those kind of divisions make their way into Congress, you know, where these things become part of it, it really shouldn't. I mean, that really should be a separate part, but because the voting membership is such that they feel strongly about, you know, their alignment with certain individuals, I think this is kind of leaking over into that, you know, they want to see somebody who can like represent everyone, which is just not possible. You're going to have some compromises, someone with the patience and, you know, in somewhat humility, just to take the job because it is thankless and just accept it and just be that strong person. And to your point, I mean, we don't have a backup at this point. I mean, what are we going to do? So, yeah, I think it really is optically not the greatest, but we're certainly not fractured any more than we were before. It just, again, from an operational standpoint, I think it's just one more thing that Democrats can look at and say, okay, you know, here's an example of why the party is not consistent.
Yeah, but I don't know if any of you guys heard today, there's talk about doing a debate for the speaker, doing a speaker's debate. That would be one unprecedented.
Fox tried to do that, but then everybody pulled out. So like that's
good.
That's off the table now.
Oh, that's not just ratings. Fox just wanted the ratings. Is all it was.
But, you know, I mean, a lot of this was happened because of what, you know, the stopgap spending bill, right? Mm-hmm. You know, and that gets the hardcore conservatives upset. But once again, I mean, this is where you have got to have a political reality.
Yeah.
If, you know, I understand what they want in general, but, you know, as we have talked about tonight, you've got a Democrat Senate. So whatever you do, you still have to get it through them.
Yep.
And you know, something that's really radical and cutting a lot of spending is not going to make it through a Democrat Senate. Mm-hmm. So that was, you know, but at least funding the government and kicking the can down the road a little bit while they try to organize themselves. I don't really have a problem with this. You know, we know our government is kind of out of control with spending. Republicans really seem to have found religion again with spending after.
That's until we take both houses in the White House, you know.
To do something again, but you know, there are things you're not going to get through the Senate anyway. Yeah. McCarthy, I think, you know, I mean, the thing about what he understood is just that we shut down the government on September 30th. This is going to definitely, you know, lead to potentially heavily losses in 2024 on the House side. This never works out for the Republicans when the government stops, you know, because the money comes back later anyway. People get paid later anyway, but then the voters have a very bitter taste in their mouth, and it shows once again the Republicans can't govern. And go ahead, Dwight.
Yeah, I was saying, and this is the kind of disorder we don't need going into an election year. Matt Gaetz is selfish. He's the kid on the playground who will basically just grab anybody's toy he wants, you know, and then, you know, will break it if he's not allowed to play with it.
Yeah. Didn't Mike Pence make a comment that Gaetz is only there for the interns?
Yes. What's his Tinder? He's got a Tinder.
I'm surprised Pence said that, but stab him. Yeah, you know, this guy.
By the way, that's a better joke than his sleeping with a teacher for 30 years joke, by the way. Somebody just Mr. Vice President, you're not a funny guy. You'll never make it as a stand-up, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, it's just it's unfortunate. I mean, you know, Dwight, you mentioned Mitch McConnell. I mean, the thing is that, you know, you do look at the Senate and you do look at the lead, you know, they're the majority leaders that they've had, Republican or Democrat, but particularly Republican. They've all, you know, there is that decorum in the Senate that has generally held. And as a result of that, you know, even though Mitch McConnell is not the most popular guy in the world with a lot of Republicans, he gets the job done. He manages to, you know, he knows how to count the votes. He knows how to get votes. And he succeeds more than he fails on things that we need to do. You know, House of Representatives, 435 people, a little over what do we have? 221 or something like that. Republicans in there right now or something. You know, we have a very thin margin, but you're now dealing with a lot of people that you've got to keep in room. I look at this as just, you know, just a bigger group than our Montgomery County Central Committee. You know, we had all those members. I'm telling you, a thankless task is being the chairman of the MCGOP, because you had to find a way to wrangle the other 47 people, and they were not in alignment a lot of times, right?
They still aren't. They still aren't.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. I mean, I'm no longer part of that, and I'm glad I'm no longer part of it.
Yeah.
But it is really sad to see that, because to me, that's a microcosm of larger problems within the Republican Party.
Yeah.
They can't help but have this, as Dave said, the circular firing squad, right? You do this, you're getting nowhere. We're going to get nowhere. And when we have a large majority, we wind up blowing it later on because we start getting a little bit fat and happy and lose focus. And it's frustrating as heck. I mean, it's like, I'm not getting younger, but this is, I was so furious at this vote to oust McCarthy. I mean, I was ready to pull my Republican registration and go independent, because I just cannot stand anymore, the shenanigans in the House.
And if you remember, I'm old, and actually we're all old enough to remember when a lot of these Republicans many of these members of Congress have been around for a while. They've been around the block, right? The ones that are now screaming about spending on many of these members, we have not had 100% turnover since the class of 08 or 06, I could say. A lot of these people voted for the bridge to nowhere. They did vote for the, they ballooned spending in the Bush era, so to speak. President Bush said, we're fighting the war on terror. What does the bridge to nowhere have to do with, and that was Republicans that were funding that. It was, we used to be the deficit hawks. It's like, we'll be deficit hawks when there's a Democrat in the White House. Until now, we're going to, and I remember some Republicans were complaining that President Bush was not vetoing any bills. You control the Senate, you control the House. I heard the same thing in North Carolina when we were down there when Pat McCrory was governor there. Our friend Brian mentioned, he goes, how he needs to start vetoing bills. I go, do the Democrats control both houses? He goes, no, Republicans. Then why are you guys sending him bad bills that you wanted to veto? What, it's really hard for the same party governor to veto his party that's in majority in both houses, their bill,
Yeah, and you're right in general. I mean, the thing is that Republicans, by and large, have done a better job of trying to keep spending in line.
Yep.
But they are not innocent of pork barrel spending, right? There's pork barrel spending, out the wazoo, because every politician in America, for the most part, basically, is that they see that pot of money that the government has. And they're all they can't wait to grab it for their constituents, because that'll get them reelected and reelected and reelected. And that's a nice little career, nice pension, nice benefits, and everything like that. And how many Republicans, said in those years that they were going to term themselves and then reneged on the term limit promises that they had, because once they got in, they're like, hey, this isn't such a bad gig.
I was part of the contract with America.
I'm going to limit myself to 6 years. I'm going to stay longer.
Yeah. Contract for America did have term limits in it.
That's true.
Remember Roscoe, when he first ran, he promised he'd only be there for 2 terms, and he was there for, I think, 10 terms.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have state legislatures that have term limits, and that seems to go okay. I mean, Montgomery County's got some term limits. I mean, it's basically one Democrat replacing another at this point. But at least we get turnover among the Democrats. And
by the way, speaking of Montgomery County, Don, this guy right here took me off his newsletter list. Don't take pictures that are memeable. Then, like that was him in Ocean City with an ice cream cone. So I just took out the background and put the guy being carjacked behind him. There's another one where he's staring at cakes. And I created a little meme thing.
And voters are just, all they have to do, it really, for a lot of these things too, is be reminded of what happens when Democrats control all the levers. Look at San Francisco and Chicago and places like this. It's bad. I mean, the situations are really bad. Yeah, and they can't figure a way to get out of it. And and that mayor, what's his name, Brandon Johnson, Chicago, it's getting even worse. I mean, I just saw a thing, about the wages for restaurant workers, where they're going to have to really pay them a set kind of minimum wage, in that $15 to $20 range. and they had talked to a restaurateur, and he says, look, he's already had to raise, the price of, the favorite burger, the patron's favorite burger, to like $16. He says, if I've got to raise the wages to this level and not, and I can't count the tips as part of the wages, he says that burger is going to go to $20 easily. This, at what point, do the patrons, the customers say, I can't spend, that burger was, I'll spend 15 or 16, but not 20, And then what happens? You get that whole thing about workers. There'll be fewer jobs. The restaurant may actually disappear. I mean, they may close a location here or there, stuff like that. It's not a good sign.
Yeah, I know, and it's crazy, Don. You may not believe this, but past weekend we were at Guapos. 3 of us, Doc, Jeff, and Chris. You would not believe it cost us over $100 at Guapos. That's basically like a step.
You sound almost like David Brooks in that whole thing he said about eating at the airport, which he got raked up. It was like $78, and he took a picture of this lunch, and there was a picture of he'd had some liquor, he'd had some alcohol with it, and later on he had to apologize saying that because the guy who was running that airport restaurant said, no, I mean, it's like, he spent, I think, $20 or $25 may have been for the burger and the fries or whatever. The rest was all alcohol. He had more than one drink. It's like, when I first saw that, I said, there's something funny about this because, how many drinks did he have? Because, I'm not crazy about airport pricing, but we have learned over the years, too, that airports have become very sensitive to that, where a lot of their contracts with food vendors say, you must have street pricing and maybe
that's BWI has that. That was and we can thank Governor Ehrlich for that one actually. Governor Ehrlich basically brought in Dunkin' Donuts and these, and one of the things he said is your prices, and because we didn't gouge them on the rent. However, at Dulles and Reagan, a slice of pizza is like $6 because they got to share the revenue with. They got to pay the bag. But where are all the baggage handlers gone? I mean, a bag here with sky caps, or they've all gone.
Mm-hmm. I think a bunch of them are in jail for stealing luggage.
Sky caps? Okay. I could never find a sky cap at the airport anymore. It was irritating. I gotta pay $7 for those little carts, the 3-wheel carts.
Is that what a smart cart costs these days?
But there could be 25 cents back if I do their job and take it back. No, I'm gonna leave it at the rental car place. You go find it and put it back.
So even though we kind of went off here to this airport thing because of myself, I will say this. So I had this trip to hell, a little over a week ago to get to Arizona, and just delay after delay after delay with American Airlines and this plane. So they did offer at one point a voucher for lunch. Some people already gone to lunch. The rest of us like, oh, okay, well, we'll get the voucher. It took a while to get. They gave us a whole $12 to spend for lunch in an airport at Reagan.
Yeah.
So that's a Coke and maybe some bag of chips.
It doesn't buy you much.
Yeah.
One of these bags of M&Ms
is unbelievable.
Yeah. This bag is like $7.
So Don, I was going to say, I liked what you said about how both parties are basically at fault for kind of spending. What it seems to me, and this is kind of my impression, so feel free to chime in as well. But like Democrats like to get in revenue by raising taxes, and like you see a lot of cities like New York and those kind of places where there was built-in value in properties, like Baltimore County too. Like the properties at one point had some value, but because of the tax stream, the value of those has gone down because they basically squeezed out all the taxes from the properties and decreased the actual usable value of that. Whereas Republicans, in my estimation, we kind of forecast on like future earnings. We think that in 5 years the economy is going to do a lot better, so we're going to spend what we're going to make 5 years from now, right now, and then we'll just be okay. 5 years. We're going to assume that things are going to go well and not ever go down. And so because we think that in the future the economy is going to be better, we kind of pre-spend that money. As opposed to just waiting for it and not having any kind of rainy day fund or stuff. So,
So
I'm not
Jeff,
saying
are you
that.
saying
Yeah.
are you saying Congress is carrying their chickens before they hatch when it comes to spending?
Have you ever not? I mean, that's the whole thing about, I understand about tax rebates, and I love having tax rebates, but again, it's all based upon we think that the economy is going to do better, but we're seeing that, prices, the cost of living in every index has gone up. Basically, we got the Federal Reserve printing money because, we're now like 30 trillion in debt. If we don't, stop this, and again, the same thing about the minimum wage, we complain that, people don't have a living wage, making minimum wage, and I agree. But the same point is, if you increase that to a point where people have, living wage, then that's going to basically, require, more devaluation of the dollar, because now everyone's going to be, paying the lower class more money, which I'm not saying they shouldn't be paid, but then that also has a ripple effect. It's kind of like the reverse Reaganomics. It's like the triple up effect, where you start, having to pay, fix the working class, and then it starts creating instability in the value of the dollar, and then at that point everyone's upset because you basically destabilized all the markets that are based upon the value of the U.S. dollar against other currencies and other markets.
And here's the thing, they don't. Here's the thing. It's like we were talking about when people got those rebate checks. Obama did rebate checks, right? Where he sent over like $500 or $1,000 or something like that. I never saw one because I think I made too much money, according to.
I didn't know it was that high. I didn't know it was that high.
It was something, but I remember my friend and I were talking about it. I go, so what are you going to do when you get the money? I'll probably invest it. So I go, yeah, same here. He goes, see, that's why these things don't work. When they give it, they go, you give it to somebody in the projects, well, not the project, somebody in low income, they'll probably go out and buy a TV or something, get the money moving. However, nobody seems to understand the power of saving. That's actually better for an economy. It's better to be the ants than it is to be the grasshoppers. But I think this last 30 years in America, we've become basically grasshoppers everywhere. Nobody wants to save for the winter, and all they do is spend.
Well,
And we've seen that here in the last few years, right? Because with you use the student loan repayment suspension, kind of they suspend that. Very few of the people whose loan payments were suspended actually saved that money, right? Now some of them did something, some of them did smart things in terms of they tried to pay down other debt, which I don't have a problem with that. But a lot of people did what you just said. They spend. They spent that money. And now we have the repayments, that just started this month. And so a lot of people are whining and complaining. It's like, you haven't had to make a loan repayment for 3 years.
Yeah.
What are you complaining about? What have you been doing in that 3 years to prepare for this? This moment was going to come sooner or later. I mean, you were banking on Biden illegally canceling all student debt. No, I don't. That's not gonna fly. I mean, you put your eggs in that basket, and now you're in trouble. You have no one to blame but yourself for that poor, management of your money. I mean, Americans in general are financially illiterate. They do not know how to handle their money very well. It comes in, it goes out. How many people do we know are paycheck to paycheck, kind of thing like that, where they don't necessarily need to be if they were taught some.
I mean, you ever listen to Dave Ramsey, Don?
I've heard him, many times.
Funniest things is when doctors or people that make over $150,000 a year, and Dave's like, how are you even in any kind of debt? You make plenty of money at $150,000, a year. Yeah. And usually we took a vacation to Bora Bora. We bought new cars. We bought the kids new cars, even though they can't drive. But it's a nice little status symbol to have. We've done this, we've done that. And Dave Ramsey, and by the way, anybody interested on YouTube, fellow YouTuber, Caleb Hammer, watch him. He puts together financial budgets for Gen Z and millennials. I've seen him come, and I can see his blood pressure going up. He'll have somebody that'll be spending $75 at 7-Eleven or taquitos, and he goes, "What are you doing, sweetheart?" Or using Uber Eats, and he'll go through. He goes, "What's this? Uber Eats. Have you not heard of cooking for yourself? Meal preps, And they're like, well, it's easier for me to just have the food come in than, I mean, that's pretty easy for everyone. In the old days, I used to love ordering pizza. You know, like the deep dish pan pizza from Pizza Hut when it was really good. And we'll put extra cheese on it. And that was like really good eating. I can't eat that now.
Well, it's funny. I mean, so again, I'll speak this because Republican parties should know. I mean, they're fairly religious as a party. They should know this example. I mean, we look at the Bible and we kind of look back and say, those people were so silly. Why didn't they understand? Like, if I was in that situation, I would have known, not to do this. But you look at the parable or the story of like Pharaoh and Joseph, and the Pharaoh said, we've got vision about 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. It was only because of Joseph's good stewardship that they were able to set aside enough in store so that when the famine came along, they were able to provide for not just Egyptians but other people too. I mean, that's a kind of common theme that we sometimes have years of plenty in the U.S. and instead of just spending and saying, okay, we're super blessed this year, things are going well, now we can pay for all the things that we were putting up before. Nobody thinks about, well, this is an outlier. It's a good outlier, but it's still an outlier. We shouldn't just think that this is going to be how things are going forward. I mean, life isn't like that. You don't assume that, like, okay, you had some bumps early on in life, but everything is now smooth sailing. That's just not how it is. But we don't. It's just human nature, I know. But
I mean, look at the great state of Maryland. Okay, Governor Ehrlich left with a record surplus, right? Larry Hogan left with a record surplus, and that. Basically, I guess I can give West. Well, he didn't have the budget. That was the Hogan budget last year, but this year it's going to be the Westmore budget. And they're going to go into that rainy day fund and spend it, and then go into deficit spending, and they're going to raise taxes because states aren't allowed to go into debt. They'll probably raise.
Look at California. I mean, California is one of the biggest examples of this mismanagement. I mean, they had a huge surplus, thanks to the pandemic and a lot of other things. And instead of setting it aside, knowing that there was going to be lean years, you kind of have the 7 fat years and then you have lean years, this kind of thing. They went ahead and the Democrat legislature went ahead and spent the money, and now they have huge deficits, and they have a problem with that. Compare that to Kim Reynolds in Iowa. They have another budget surplus. What she's been able to do is that they are very, very close to hitting more numbers. If they hit some more numbers here in the next year or two, they will be able to eliminate the state income tax as a result of that. And that's good stewardship. That is good fiscal management. If the state of California had taken a little bit of that money and rebated it back to the taxpayers because they had overpaid for a lot of stuff, because they always do.
That's really what a surplus is. Let's not kid ourselves. It's just
but instead the Democrats, they go spend it on other programs, and then they run out of money, and then they think, oh, well, now we got to go raise taxes because we ran out of money. It's like, your financial mismanagement. None of you guys deserve to be in office. This is where the voters really don't wake up, and they need to wake up when you see this in a lot of these states, is that if your state legislature cannot manage your budget, get rid of them. Find people who can do it and are willing to stick to it. There's no reason for you to pay higher taxes like that.
And here's the thing about when I do these I don't know if you guys have watched that TLC show. I think it's on TLC, My 600-Pound Life, right? You have these people that get to 600 pounds, then they want to go to Dr. Now to have them cut their stomach down to the size of a walnut, right? See, that's Congress. That's any legislative body. They are at this point where they're at that, they wonder, oh, how did I get so fat? They didn't think of this when they were around 300 pounds. I did know. When I got to around 350, this can't keep going, but the point is, they want somebody else to come in and save them. They don't even want to do the work on their own, pretty soon,
I mean, Dwight, even to that extent, I mean, say you are, you're extremely obese or whatever, and you decide to get the bariatric surgery, right? Mm-hmm. There's still things you need to do to maintain that lower weight. Mm-hmm. And we have friends of ours that have had that surgery, mm-hmm. and that over time their weights come back. Or, in the case of some women, I mean, their weight has shifted all the way to their lower. All of a sudden now they're really disproportionate. All of a sudden their rear ends are like humongous. They didn't follow the diet, and now everything's kind of all out of proportion, because they didn't. They thought, oh, this was the magic pill. I get this, and I'm going to be fine. I can do whatever. No, you can cut the budget down there, but if you don't have people who are willing to follow some strict guidelines and rules, it's going to come right back at them, right?
Yeah, and it's like and it's kind of like, or the other example I could use, which people get offended with it. They're kind of like crack addicts. Like they're they basically that's the money is their crack. It's funny. I was talking to Bats today. I think cookies are becoming like crack for me. I just cannot have one cookie.
For me, it's
example was good because you talk about appetite. So Congress has a certain appetite. You have these programs, and you say, okay, well, we have excess, so it feels good to start funding these programs. But once you get used to it, then it's really difficult to tighten your belt, both figuratively and literally, and go back to how things were before. I mean, that's the struggle we all have. I mean, when things are tight economically for families, I mean, nobody likes cutting back and saying, well, we can't go out to eat anymore because we don't have the money for it or we're more responsible to. Telling Congress, hey, you really should stop, all this excess spending and be more frugal about how you spend stuff. Nobody likes that. But if you actually do that, or get like the surgery that makes you feel like, okay, I'm comfortable. I feel full with less food. That's a good start. But then you start getting back. Okay, well, now you add a little more because this feels good, and start getting that cycle. So you may have, like with the Maryland surplus, you may have someone come in, do all the hard work, get you a surplus, and now you say, okay, this feels so good to have, food finally again.
Hey guys,
and then all the hard work is gone. At that point, you have to start from square one again.
Yeah. By the way, this is Congress, by the way, and that's Rick Moranis is the tax.
Feed me all night long.
That's
right, boy. You can do it. Feed me some more. Feed me all night.
Hey, that. I hate to say it, that is what Congress has become.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at how budgets are often created for the agencies, though, is that they get money that lasts until September 30th, and what happens with the majority of these agencies? They get down to that last 15 to 30 days.
Yep. Spend all this money.
We have money to spend. We got to spend it, because if we don't spend it, we might get that taken away, and there isn't an agency head anywhere in the government that wants to see their budget cut.
I know that's how there was an agency.
The rest of us, no. Yeah, it's like it's always going in the upside, right?
That is how the good people at NIST got 80-inch TVs all over the place. They had money left over, so they bought I think 4 or 5 80-inch TVs. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, because speaking of immigration, you're going to add a lot to these cities and counties because they're going to have to shelter all these folks.
We never, this is why a controlled immigration policy. I'm not against immigration. I mean, I think we're the land of immigrants, but we need to do it the right. Like if you remember the Vietnamese immigrants that came over in the 70s, not one of them became burdens on society.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with the immigrants is the fact that, again, I'm like you. I don't have a problem with. I mean, all of us were immigrants at one point. But the thing is, okay, you look at someone who's undocumented, and they're getting money.
Let's not call them undocumented. Let's call what they are.
I say undocumented for this reason, because they're getting money under the table. That work, that pay is not getting documented. So they're getting paid for what they're doing, but it's never documented. So they're not getting taxed on it. It's not helping anyone. So they're getting, the farmers are still spending money. But they're not paying, income tax to the government. The workers are paying income tax, so they're receiving the benefits of living in this country without any of the associated costs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we go Canada and say, okay, every dollar you spend on gas, 25 cents goes to the government. I mean, we could go that route, but we don't do that. The way we get taxes is from income and other sources.
Remember, Lisa Simpson defected to Canada because they have a better healthcare system. Dave and I talked about that episode a few weeks ago, actually, where they had the Upstate New York song, which I enjoy sharing that with Mark. who's from upstate New York.
But there are some benefits in universal healthcare. I mean, I won't admit it. I think everyone should have access to healthcare. The problem is that you look at places like UK with the National Health Service. You got some people that have great service and other people that are terrible. I mean, having just that one choice where you can't actually, you're stuck in a queue where it's like you may have this surgery which the government or the NHS thinks is not critical enough, and so it may be something that actually affects your quality of life, but you can't. There's no other choice.
They have death panels. They actually have death panels there. By the way, Jeff, question for you, because you brought up the universal healthcare in England. When the Empire hosted the Olympics 4 or 6 years ago, they spent in the opening. They spent like 5 minutes talking about the salute to the universal healthcare. Now this year it's going to be in France, I should say. Do you think the French will devote the opening ceremonies to French universal healthcare? They have universal healthcare in France too. I think they should spend their time dedicated to French pastries. I would much rather see that.
France actually does a lot of things well. I mean, we call French, a lot of people call them fascists, but the French government does a lot of things well. I mean, they use nuclear power for energy. They have reasonable regulations. They don't for work and other things. I mean, they have benefits, but they also have systems to pay into it. I mean, and they still can support. I mean, they supported us during our independence. I mean, they support other countries. Not that I want to be exactly like France, but that's a good example of like a country that makes reasonable choices. Whereas you look at a country like Germany, who says we're going to go totally green, we're not going to do any nuclear at all, and now they start become dependent on other
how'd that work out for the
energy source because they don't have that, and it costs them both an increase in the cost of energy plus reliance on external sources. So again, there's not like sometimes we just learn about this stuff by seeing other people's. How they either use stuff well or not, but again, it's people like to diss on France.
There is another winter approaching, and the Germans have yet to fire up their either coal plants or nuclear plants all over again.
Yeah.
What do they just want to?
We talk about like Russia when they first invaded Georgia. I mean, Georgia was the big thing was exporting natural gas. Russia is an oligarchy. They have the government control utilities, and so for them, it makes sense for them to occupy countries that are great exporters of energy because that helps them, the people in power, make money. They want Ukraine for economic reasons. I mean, that's part of their reason they want. I mean, yes, there's a whole reunification of of Russia, which is ostensibly a national policy, but really it's about getting the money coming in because Russia is not a well-off country.
They're like the Ottoman Turks. The Russians are a lot like the Ottoman Turks were between the two world wars. They're a dying empire. They don't know they're dying. But I tell you, it brings us to what are we at day? Are we close to day 600 of this? The Russians. This is going. I think if it goes on much longer, it's going to be going on longer than the Dominion War the Federation got into. That was basically three seasons. The Dominion War was 3 seasons. Actually, not 3 full seasons because it didn't start to the end of I guess season 3. End of season 3 is when it happened. When they had that the lady Vorta that came up and she goes, "You have no idea what troubles you've gotten yourself into now," and left. But. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if maybe the end of the war will be when the Federation and their allies just finally decimate Moscow, and their Chinese supporters, like the Jemadar, the founders, will start exterminating Russians city by city because some of the Russians will turn on the Russians. Maybe it'll be like the Russians will have the same fate the Cardassians did in Deep Space Nine.
Well, I'm sure.
Remember the Russians, actually tried to get money by letting citizens go into space, the rockets.
Yeah.
So the USSR was basically, trying to privatize their industry and say, okay, all the people with all this money, come with us. We'll give you a free trip to outer space. Oh, not free trip. We'll take you to outer space.
You may not come back alive, but you'll be able to go into space and tweet out that I'm in space, or X out, I should say.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that would maybe help build up Western support for Ukraine is, as Jeff was pointing out, the importance of bleeding Russia. This is hurting them. At least if we know there's some progress going on. But I just think that's. I'm sure it's hurting Russia. I just don't know how much it's hurting them.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think the Russian army has about another, at the very most, 18 months left in them to keep this fight going. Because they're going to, we're coming up on year 3 now, Don? Is this year 3 or year 2?
Well, we haven't hit, we're at what? We're at 365 days in a year. We haven't hit 730, so we're still short.
Yeah.
So I'll say this too, is that, to your point, David, if we have other interests in Ukraine, I know that people hate to think about like the Vietnam War and those kind of things, but Vietnam was a great latex exporter. We needed the latex for automobile towels and those kind of things. So it wasn't just about that, but it's kind of a you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back kind of thing, where we give aid to Ukraine. They provide us, favorite status for certain types of things in the future, because Ukraine is economically in that region pretty well off as far as what they're able to do. So getting that kind of preferred status is a good return on kind of an investment. We're investing for their security as a country. We get that kind of paid back to us in dividends. I mean, we've seen that before with like Japan, how we help them rebuild after their bombing, and whether or not you agree with that or not, they came back stronger, and they lost a lot of their imperialistic kind of viewpoints, and they became very westernized as far as their consumerism. And
but it's funny. Harry Hito was really not gung ho about the war. It was more Tojo and his generals were all for expanding the Japanese empire, so to speak. And if they had just so. And then it's funny, if you ever watch, there's a guy on YouTube does things about, he makes fun of the conspiracy theories. He goes, I don't know why they're blaming America for these atomic bomb attacks. It's clearly a Godzilla attack that just uses fire breath. Look at all the destruction, that happened as a result of Godzilla. They blame America, but it's funny that they do that. They have a sense of humor. But speaking of Godzilla, did you know? One of the people in the original Toho Studios had spent some time in jail because he lied and said he did basically when Toho was hiring, he was one of the people that was doing propaganda videos for the Imperial Japanese and that was like a no, you weren't allowed to do that. And that was a big thing. Evidently, there was also a couple of people hired that were like former propagandists for the war efforts. But very fascinating book, by the way. Toho talks about it in detail in his book. If I could think of the name, I'd tell you the name, but I can't think of it. So, well,
Japan became a great force, though, a good positive force after World War II. Because
and David, you probably remember what was going on in 1988, 87, 89, and that in 1990. The fall of 1989, if you remember, the Japanese Mitsubishi Corporation bought Times Square.
Yeah.
Sony bought, which was it, Columbia Pictures? The gal that has the little.
Was it Disney or
no? They bought Columbia. It was Columbia.
Columbia.
Got the one with the looks like
And I remember USA Today cover had they had a geisha holding a torch. It had the old Japanese war flag.
Oh wow!
And that's why a lot of people, and I remember everyone saying, "Oh, the Japanese are going to take over America." And
I remember that. I remember those.
Look what happened.
Yeah, I agree. I remember hearing that because that's what we thought in the late '80s. We thought Japan, how are we going to compete with them, and they're going to dominate the world? And of course, it didn't happen. But
there was actually a Godzilla movie where Chinese came back in time to unleash Ghidorah and remove Godzilla from protecting Japan because the Japanese economy grew so big. They were like the largest economy in the world.
But to your point, I mean, so Japan never bought land and other
Yeah.
resources like China's done. So I mean,
Well, they
I'm
bought
much more worried about
Mitsubishi
China
Square. I mean, Times
than
Square.
yeah, but I mean, I think from a terms
They
of like they're
they
trying to
actually
get a
did buy a
foothold.
lot of shopping. They bought they bought tangible things like shopping malls, stuff like that. They bought real estate. They did buy real estate in Hawaii.
But the difference with the Chinese is the Japanese share our values.
It's the government. It's the Japanese. Basically, the Chinese government is the one that's purchasing land through their corporations, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
you may remember there was a businessman who bought Pebble Beach golf course out there, famous golf course. He paid $850 million for that thing.
Yeah.
He sold it 2 years later at a $350 million loss.
Wow.
You know, there was a lot of pain there, but yeah, it was all that flurry of deals that people were like, oh no, Japan's taken over and stuff like that, and it never really panned out.
Yeah.
I mean, can you believe they bought Times Square before Rudy Giuliani was mayor? Nobody went to Times Square after dark. They should have. I remember there was an episode of Golden Girls where they made a funny comment where B. Arthur, uber liberal's character goes, she goes, "Yeah, we'll be ice skating in Mitsubishi Square." But whatever happened to Mitsubishi? They used to make some great televisions back in the day, and they're not even making televisions anymore.
Yeah, probably. I mean, look, the Koreans are making the bulk of a lot of products, right? So,
Yeah.
they
JVC doesn't do anything anymore. I mean, even like RCA. I mean, all the electronics manufacturers are pretty much
Panasonic's
all
gone too,
outsourced.
right? Is Panasonic still around?
Panasonic was I forget the Japanese name was like Mitsubishi, not Mitsubishi, but like it was like two words because you look at the CD-ROM drives, like they actually had the actual name of the Japanese corporation that did it. So, but yeah, it's just you don't really see that stuff nowadays, and it's all China. And I've mentioned this before that China has part of the reason is because they have a complete monopoly on certain resources like the raw materials for the rare earth magnets and such, and they control it for a reason. They want to make sure that they're the only supplier of those parts. So again, it's Japan. Though Japan like invested in the U.S. products and places, they were individuals, like you said. It wasn't like the country of Japan, and these were like individual investors trying to increase their holdings. But it's like U.S. buying properties in Canaries or something like that. I mean, people just that have too much money will invest in out of the country.
I mean, Monsanto buys farmland all over Asia these days. Nobody cares,
Exxon buying, oil fields wherever. I mean, this is what people just do. But
or the Saudis buying sports teams.
We never catered to Japan, saying like Disney never said, okay, we're gonna support Japan's economic policy, political party by making sure that our movies comply with their standards. Because imagine like if we had to censor our movies based upon Japan's standards. We'd have like mosaic everywhere. People were like, what is this? It's like, well, we're doing it out of respect or something. But it's like,
it's like we made. I mean, there was like, the Japanese had no problems with what was that movie, The Seventh Samurai or something like that, where some American is loosely based on Lord Satsuma, who was the last samurai, but they turned him into an American instead of Japanese. And we never had this. We never had Star Wars if it weren't for the good folks in Japan, the Seven Samurais. That was basically Star Wars. I wonder who the Jar Jar Binks would have been in that prequels to the Seven Samurais. And but I mean, the difference is the Japanese believed in democracy.
Yes. They shared our values, not like the Chinese.
The Chinese are just totalitarians, all over the board, frankly.
Yeah, and I think they have a real desire for world domination, or at least domination of Asia.
They've got this inferiority complex, similar to Matt Gaetz having an inferiority complex. That's why he brought down my. He thinks he's not going to be able to sit at the cool kids table. I am serious about this. That is Matt Gaetz' problem. He was probably not allowed to sit at the cool kids table at lunch. As a result, that's why he is the way he is. But wow, it's 8:00. We're almost at final thoughts, actually. We should get one of those bells, like when Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, when they run out of time, so Regis stops talking.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah.
Yeah. So, final thoughts. Let's start with you, Don.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to get through this. I'm going to just be a little more melancholy for me. But as you all probably know, we lost our son Spencer on September 24th to pancreatic cancer. This has been tough, and well, I thought I'd get through this anyway. It was a short battle, but he did the best he could, and I just wanted to pay tribute to him as a son. He was a great kid, 35 years old. I've learned a lot about this cancer. Never wanted to learn about this cancer. We've seen famous people pass away from this, and you don't really get a feeling for cancer and the different variations until it hits your family. And so, we're slogging on at this point in time, but it's going to take some time for us to readjust. And I apologize for getting emotional about it, but it's really hard. When
It's okay, Don.
yeah, and he was out there in Arizona, and we spent as much time with him as we could. But it was really amazing how fast this cancer moves. He didn't feel any symptoms at all until the end of July. They tested him, and he didn't get an official diagnosis till beginning of September. And we were somewhat hopeful because of his age and everything like that. But we also could see some big warning signs. I mean, some of the tests came back and they were not good at all. But you hope and you pray that you're going to be the one that can sneak through and buy a little more time. And we thought we had that. He was trying to keep a stiff upper lip and be confident about it. But in those last 3 weeks of his life, he was in the ER 4 times for issues that were related to this cancer, and it just moved fast. I mean, he was scheduled to get another biopsy and get treatment, and didn't make it. It was just a horrendous thing for our family. But I think the blessing here too is that it's hopefully going to bring our family closer together. And we've had a lot of support from a lot of people. I'm going to have to help my daughter-in-law through a lot of things. I mean, this is, Spencer did everything. So I am now trying to teach her a little bit about financial management and things like that. And I'm going to try to manage some things from afar, and as she tries to figure out what she's going to do at age 31 and being a widow. It's a tragic situation. But pancreatic cancer, unfortunately, is one that there is no test for it. In essence, by the time you have symptoms, you're already probably at stage 3 or 4.
Wow.
And then it's just a matter of time in terms of finding it. I will say this: I did join a pancreatic cancer support group on Facebook, and they're pretty. It's been an amazing and enlightening experience to see the variations and how this does. Cancer. You can't give cancer just kind of. You get lung cancer, you get pancreatic cancer, you get whatever, colon cancer. It affects everybody differently because of their physiology and the mutation of the cancer itself, the cells itself. So, when I look at this in the cancer group, I see how different people, have been able to, theirs wasn't as bad, so they were able to have some surgery that has prolonged their life. But I did see this one instance of this woman who I've really felt, a lot of sorrow for, because she brought up the thing about her husband who had stage 4. There's so many stage 4s. It's unbelievable. But he had multiple rounds of chemo, and he was on oxygen, and, he's lost a lot of weight, all things that happen under this scenario. And, she was just distraught and wondering what to do. And I'm here as a parent now who's lost a child, and I'm thinking like, here's the reality of the situation. I could not tell her this on Facebook, but what is the quality of life for your husband at this point in time? does he have a life? I mean, and this is the thing that where we feel somewhat blessed with Spencer is that he hadn't gotten to the chemo yet, but we were very concerned about the chemo and what it would do to him and how that would be and change his quality of life. Because, if you really can't eat much and you're always tired and you have all these other issues and things like that, is that really living? And this is where you have to start putting, his hands in his hands, in the creator in essence, and so say, this is not our decision anymore. So anyway, I've learned a lot. It's tough, but hopefully none of you here or none of you watching will ever have to experience, this kind of pain, whether or not it's a loved one, a child, whatever. It is devastating. And so it'll take some time for us to kind of heal up from this, but I want to pay tribute to Spencer and all he was. So,
And I'll just add to that. I remember meeting Spencer when I was working for him. He was 8 years old, always, very jolly. He was, I remember he asked who my favorite hockey team was. Like, I really don't have one. He goes, well, you got to have one. Everyone's got to have a favorite hockey team. He was very into sports, and he was great. But yeah, David, final thoughts.
Well, first off, my condolences, Don. I know there's nothing I can say. I think it's got to be pain that I could never really imagine, to lose a child, and then especially so young at 35. And so when I heard, I was that is shocking. But I'll continue certainly to have you and your family in my prayers, whatever good that could do. Well, okay, for my final thought, I know it's hard to transition, but for me, I'd say, at least back to politics, I was
You have
shocked.
two members of Congress that have your book now, right?
Pardon?
You have two members of Congress that have your book now, right, in their
Well,
hands?
that's right. Yeah, Tom Davis was nice enough last night to buy the book. I was very touched by that. I was at an event and I had my book, and they came over and Tom said, he said, "Oh, I wrote a book once," and so he bought my book. He wrote a couple, and I bought one of his. And it was nice because throughout the event, he had the book in his hand. So he's talking to people. He's got the book in his hand, and then he gets up to speak. He's got the book in his hand. So I thought it was very nice. I got like advertising there. But I'll say, at least politically, nationally, what's kind of stood out for me was the fact that you got the mayor of New York and the mayor of Chicago going to Mexico over this issue of the migrants. And I was thinking to myself, it's an example of the failure of the federal government, because they always claim the power to deal with the border and border security and immigration. But they're failing so bad that we got a couple big city mayors, the mayor of the largest city in the country and the third largest, going overseas to try to do something. They still don't want to criticize Biden, but at least they're trying to do something, and whatever
They're
might.
blaming Donald Trump for all this. It was funny.
Huh?
They, like Mayor Adams, he's blaming Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans for the illegal breakdown.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing too, Dave, I mean, you mentioned is just, I mean, Adams goes there and he's touting New York City as this great business opportunity, but he's basically saying, we don't want your immigrants, we don't want your people. We want your business, but don't send us more people.
You should have
Because you're poor, because you're poor, you're tired, but not your Mexicans.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wonder if Mayor Adams said how much he loved, how our First Lady loves the breakfast tacos or
breakfast burritos. Yeah,
the breakfast burritos at McDonald's.
Yeah.
McDonald's used to have breakfast burritos.
I remember they're pretty good. I thought.
I think they still do, some places.
But Dwight, now that you just reminded me, I did get the McDonald's app on my phone. So
you get free fries Friday?
Yes, that's right. So that could be dangerous. But anyway, so that was the one thing that struck me, is that they're going.
We know you can get four free fries Fridays, because we got a friend of ours who's made
That's good.
Is able to gain the system.
But those fries are so good for your health.
No, my cholesterol is high. I shouldn't do it, but
my cholesterol's high. That's why I've been trying to cut all that stuff out.
See, I don't like. I mean, I can eat 4 or 5 of those French fries, and I get tired of them.
Yeah.
There's only so
They
many
have fries, but they're not good for me. But their fries are good. And I will say also, I'm looking forward to coming back to Maryland for the Bob Ehrlich event. So I'm looking forward to coming back to Maryland. So that'll be nice. And but But otherwise, I'm just hanging in there, doing well. And again, my condolences. And yeah, I know it's tough, but we understand.
You know how when it's funny. You know how when you brand stuff, David. We started off with an Ehrlich Gala, and then we changed the salute because the governor said we're not Gala feet.
Yeah.
I'm thinking and now like a couple weeks ago, I think we should have called this the Ehrlich Homecoming.
Well, good. Well,
And,
it's good to salute him. I mean, he was a good governor. I like Bob Ehrlich. I like him as a congressman. And he broke. By the way, he broke the string. Remember, before Ehrlich, the last Republican governor of Maryland would have been Agnew, right?
Yes, Farrell T. Agnew.
So yeah, I helped out. I got you to mention.
I think you meant yeah.
But so Ehrlich was good, and I'm happy to be there. But I don't know.
He is actually right now. He is the most popular former Republican governor of the state of Maryland.
I would imagine so.
Yeah, and then I think behind him is Governor McKeldin and Governor Goldsboro.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
who knows who they are? But I don't know that you're going to have such a big party for Larry Hogan, though. At least for Republicans.
Well, I mean, he hasn't been out of office for 10 years yet.
Well, yeah.
Time heals a lot of them.
We'll see what Hogan's next move is. If he runs for Senate and becomes a senator, that would help him.
Yeah, but he's not going to.
I'd have no respect for him if he did that. If he did that, he would show he's a team player, maybe to some degree. But
if he runs for president with a no labels party, maybe we should throw him a going away party, leading the Republican Party for no labels.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you guys, and that's my final thoughts.
Final thoughts, Jeff. What did you? This was your first Lincoln Day dinner, right? Actually, no. It wasn't your first.
No, the first one for PG.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I was going to say, I really did enjoy the fact that I got to hear Vivek speak, and for those,
Vivek,
what's that?
Vivek like cake has
yes, Vivek is cake like cake, as I say. So it's interesting because it's always interesting to hear someone who's a candidate for the presidency, speak, because you get to hear obviously their position, but kind of like their thought process too, because sometimes you see candidates that run just because they feel like they want to make a point, like they have something they just want to express. That's like, I'm running because I know I'm not going to win, but I just want to make it a show because there's an issue that I want to bring to light. I think he's very aware of this competition, and he was very respectful. He didn't downplay, Trump at all. He didn't criticize and didn't bash him at all. He did say that, his policies and stuff. And I really like the fact that he was very well-spoken. I think he seemed to espouse all of the kind of, things that I felt should be in a president. And to the point, he felt like he had kind of that youthful enthusiasm, that he wasn't jaded yet for, being in politics, that he really wanted to, work with people, and he had the energy to try to work through issues. So anyway, this is a short aside. I was very pleased to see him speak. Beyond that, I was going to say, and it's, I don't know why it is. It seems like deaths always seem to come in threes, but, we had Kasha, then the Spencer, and I'm not sure if there's someone else that, is, we're going to see pass, but it just seems, I don't know, for whatever reason, that this sometimes just seems that those things come in threes, but obviously my most sincere condolences, Don. I hadn't really had a chance to not to meet Spencer, but I'm hoping to, when we meet in person again, you can tell me more about his life, and because sounds like a great guy, and I just I can't even imagine that impact of his loss. My last thought basically was kind of piggybacking on what was said earlier about how New York is not wanting, is feeling the effects of the undocumented with the immigrant workers and such. And it's funny because you hear issues like Democrats have issues with, like, they want to have gun law reforms. They don't understand that there's similarities between like gun law reform and immigration policy. It's like the criminals don't get their guns from legal sources. The immigrants don't come in from legal sources. So if you're going to criticize one, if you're going to criticize the fact that there's these guns out there that are killing people, criticize the sources that they're getting these guns from, criticize how they're getting these guns, but don't criticize the guns themselves. Just like, workers is like, you may be Mexican, you may come in legally and come in through legal means. I have nothing against Mexicans in general. I have a problem with the illegal, presence of these workers because it undermines our system and it erodes an already, struggling economy. So obviously we're seeing that take place, and it's just funny they can't see how they're so against one thing and its effects, but they don't see the causation and the effects of the other things like gun control. They just say, well, guns kill people, and they don't think about the people behind the guns, that how they get them and that whole chain. So anyway, that's I guess all my final thoughts.
Well, my turn, and I do believe in magic. The Orioles have postseason play this year, and I think for a lot of people, it's been multiple generations since the Orioles have had postseason play, and it is so great, they play. I believe tonight's game one, right? Or today
No,
was.
I don't think they play until tomorrow.
Oh yeah, the 8th it's October 8th actually, is when they play.
Yeah,
they play the Rangers.
Yep.
And I think that the Orioles' magic has rubbed off a few miles down the road in College Park. The Maryland Terrapins are 5-0. 5-0. 3-0. They're 2-0 in the conference. This is like the best record.
They play Ohio State, so we'll see how that.
I think they won. Did they beat Ohio State? I thought they did.
No, they're going to play them next.
Oh, that's right. That's Saturday. That's right. I don't know. Today feels like weird. Maybe it's because I've been working on the Ehrlich yearbook for the thing all day. Today feels like a Saturday. But by the way, the program book is going to be really awesome. It's going to be like a yearbook, and it'll be a lot.
Is Ellen Sauerbrey coming? Will Ellen Sauerbrey?
Of course, yeah, Ellen is going to be there. Boyd Rutherford's going to be there.
Good.
Number of state senators, county executives, the 3 Republican county executives.
Good.
And by the way, we're gonna have more fun at our fundraiser than Wes Moore is gonna have at his. Wes Moore has a fundraiser the same night we're doing ours. I wish it was like because we're at the BWI Hilton. I wish his was like the Marriott, so we could have like we could do a clash of sounds. Who can make the more noise.
Yeah.
But it's great to have the Terps having a winning season. The Ravens aren't doing all that bad.
Yeah.
Even the Redskins aren't doing all that bad, but they have lost 2 or 3 in a row. I forget where they're at now, and the Orioles.
Well,
Orioles
like I said, I'm going to suspend my dislike for the Orioles because they are coming back now as a traditional. So I will be rooting for them.
And by the way, they re-signed at Camden Yards, by the way, for another 10 years, But that was telling people, if the Orioles left Baltimore, I hope they have the good sense to use Mayflower moving when they move. And they do it in the dark when it's raining, too. Because I remember the Colts moved, it was raining when they moved out in the middle of the night.
I remember that. I still remember the camera, covering it and seeing the Mayflower truck come around.
Yeah. That's why Mayflower doesn't do much business in the state of Maryland.
They got that.
And plenty of tickets available for the Ehrlich event. And, if you can't buy online, you can pay at the door. We are not going to turn anyone away. The place can hold a good number of folks, and if we have people standing in the aisles, we'll have people standing in the aisles. I don't care. This is the party of the year for for Maryland Republicans, and people forget Bob Ehrlich in his government. He got a lot of bipartisan support from Democrats. And we may see some Democrats there too, which is weird.
Yeah, he was. I'm just sorry he wasn't a 2-termer because I thought he was very good.
But he was a great one-term governor. I mean, I think some would say he's done more. He did more for Maryland and he did more to build the Republican Party in his one term than another governor did in 8 years.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the other governor was cared about himself and didn't care about the party. But I better stop before I get myself in trouble now.
Sorry.
But come on out, mdgop.org. You can buy your tickets there. Wonderful, wonderful event. And the food is exquisite. It's not your typical rubber chicken,
Good.
So come on out. Come all. Say hey to Gov. Gov's man of the people,
Well, if Jeff and Don are there, I'll see them there.
Yeah, and we're going to have Jeff might be doing pictures also in the VIP that night.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm definitely helping with the sound system. I can bring my camera too, so I'll have it with me regardless.
Oh, and by the way, yeah, and I'll talk out offline, but see everyone next week, and we'll have a nice little recap of the Ehrlich dinner, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.